Today we are marking off a bucket list hike. We are hiking down to the Havasupai waterfalls. We've been wanting to do this forever. We just started the hike. It's already beautiful. We are hiking down into the Grand Canyon right now. Look at these views. Life is good.
Welcome to Havasupai Reservation in Arizona, home to some of the most beautiful waterfalls in the world. In this video, we'll be going over our itinerary during our 4 days here, as well as sharing a little info and tips for those thinking about visiting. I suppose before we get too much into the hike though, we should back it up a bit and briefly talk about how to get here and get a permit. So our trip began from Florida, where we caught a flight to Phoenix, Arizona. Now for those flying in, Las Vegas is actually the closest airport to Havasupai, but we found tickets to Phoenix for a much better price, so decided to save some money. After landing, we rented a car and drove 3.5 hours to the Grand Canyon Caverns Inn in Seligman, Arizona. This is where you'll check in for your reservation, and it's also the closest lodging to the start of the trail. Checking in ahead of time is required, and we highly recommend checking in the day before to pick up your wristbands. This way you can start the 10-mile hike early the next morning and beat the heat, and get there with some time to explore. Just be sure to check their hours ahead of time to make sure you don't miss the check-in deadline, otherwise you'll have to wait until the following morning to check in and start the hike. After checking into the Caverns Inn, we unloaded our luggage and began packing up our backpacks for the hike the following morning.
Pretty tired.
How'd you sleep?
The alarm here at the hotel went off like at midnight. I guess somebody set it and never turned it off, and then it went off 10 minutes later. So it kind of threw off the circadian rhythm. But I slept okay overall. I don't think I'm going to be sleeping all that great these next couple of days, but I'm still excited. I'm still feeling great about getting out there and seeing this magical place.
The next morning we woke up at 3 a.m. to finish the last bit of packing and drive 1.5 hours to the start of the trailhead. Starting early is highly recommended, especially during the summer months where the afternoon temperatures frequently hit triple digits. After parking and saying hi to the local dogs, we were ready to begin the hike. The journey into the village is an 8-mile hike that takes you down into the Grand Canyon and has incredible views all along the way. Fortunately, on the way in, it's mostly downhill, but we were carrying all of our food, water, camera gear, and supplies for 4 days on our backs, so it was no walk in the park. When making your reservation, you do have the option to get a pack mule, which will carry your bags for an additional $400, and there's even a helicopter that runs certain days if you want to avoid the hike altogether. Just be sure to check the helicopter schedule ahead of time and know that it is on a first come first served basis, so you may have to wait a while. We decided to make the trek ourselves, carrying all our own gear, and it was definitely a challenge, especially once the sun and the heat came out.
The sun has come up over the canyon. Officially in the sun now. I think it's supposed to be 105 degrees today. We still got like 6 miles to go.
Along the way, you'll come across lots of local dogs that live here, and they always appreciate a little water and dog treats, so we recommend to pack some treats with you as well. Also, be sure to give the locals and pack mules the right of way along the trail.
Wow, this water looks unreal. I think we're getting close. I think we got about a mile to go, maybe even less, to get to the lodge and village. We are exhausted. My shoulders hurt, my feet hurt, but it's been such a beautiful hike though the entire way, and we're just so thankful to be here. All right, let's finish it out.
After a long and exhausting 8-mile hike, we finally made it into Supai Village, which is where the lodge is located. Now, photos and videos past here are forbidden, so we don't have much footage, but there is a little cafe that had some really good food, as well as a small store that sold some basic camping supplies.
We just went into the village and checked into the lodge, which is where we're staying. It was actually super nice. The air conditioning works great. We took a shower, took a nap. We're not allowed to show inside the village or the lodge because they do not allow any filming inside there. Pretty much has 2 beds, there's a little fridge, there's a little microwave, and you have a shower and bathroom. And so it's actually really nice, really clean. We're now heading to Havasu waterfall. It's about a 2-mile walk there and it'll be 2 miles back. I think that's all we're gonna do today, and then tomorrow we're gonna be doing a big long hike.
Along the way to Havasu Falls, you will pass the campground, which is where most people stay. Now obviously it doesn't have all the amenities and luxuries of the lodge, but it is way closer to the waterfalls and will save you about 4 miles of hiking each day, so definitely keep that in mind if you choose to stay at the lodge. Eventually we finally reached Havasu Falls and got our first glimpse of the magnificent turquoise waters of Havasupai. Havasu Falls is one of 5 main waterfalls located in Havasupai and is probably the most well-known and iconic. It's also the easiest to get to and a great place to just relax and enjoy the refreshing cool waters. It truly is a sight to behold though, and pictures and videos honestly don't do it justice. We spent a couple hours here enjoying the reward of our long hike and spent our time swimming, relaxing, and taking lots of photos. Unfortunately, we couldn't stay too long because we still had a 2-mile uphill hike back to the lodge, and we had to be up bright and early the next day for another long hike.
Day 2 here in Havasupai. Today we are doing Mooney and Beaver Falls. It's gonna be a long one. It's gonna be about 14 to 15 miles round trip. We're already exhausted from yesterday. We woke up, everything was sore. Did not feel like getting up, but it's not every day you get to wake up here. So we're gonna make the most of it and go do an awesome hike and see some beautiful waterfalls today.
On our second day in Havasupai, we woke up bright and early again to begin our longest and most difficult hike of the trip. Our goal was to visit 2 more waterfalls on a 15-mile round-trip hike to Beaver Falls. Keep in mind, if you are staying at the campground, it's only about 10 to 11 miles round trip, which is a great motivation to stay there instead of the lodge. Along the way, we first passed Havasu Falls again before continuing on to Mooney Falls. Mooney Falls is another iconic waterfall, but it's also quite difficult to get to. Getting here requires climbing through some small caves and descending down a very steep and slippery section of rocks and ladders using only a rope. You'll definitely want to take your time here to avoid injury, and if you have a fear of heights, you may want to consider skipping this one. Once you reach the bottom though, it is all worth it as you get to view Mooney Falls in all of its glory.
We made it to Mooney Falls. It was a little sketchy coming down, but so much fun and totally worth it. We started up there. And then you climb down, down, down.
After taking a short break to enjoy the falls and also grab a bite to eat, we continued on towards Beaver Falls. From here, it's a long 4-mile trek through the Grand Canyon. There are several river crossings as well, so be sure to either wear some waterproof shoes or bring a change of shoes for these sections. Along the way, there are incredible views and changing scenery as you wind back and forth past Havasu Creek. We even saw several bighorn sheep along the way, which was super cool. Keep in mind, if you are visiting in the summer months like we did, it can get very hot during the day, so be sure to bring lots of water, snacks, and sun protection. As you get closer to the end, you will have to descend down a series of precarious looking ladders as you make your final descent towards Beaver Falls. Beaver Falls is one of the most popular destinations in Havasupai and is known for its multi-level waterfalls and natural pools of turquoise water. It's a perfect place to spend the day relaxing and lounging around, especially after a long, hard hike. We got here around 12 p.m. in the afternoon, and as you can see, it was already quite busy, so if you want to avoid crowds, I would recommend to leave as early as possible and hike in the dark. We still had a blast though and loved soaking in the refreshing waters here. Eventually though, it was time to leave since we still had a 7-mile uphill hike back to the lodge. Along the way back, be sure to stop at the fry bread stand if you get a chance, which is located near the campground. If you've never had fry bread before, it's pretty much a Native American taco, and there is nothing better after a long, hard hike.
Day 3 in Havasupai. We slept in today because we were exhausted from yesterday's hike. We're feeling rested and ready for some more hiking now. We're gonna knock off the last 2 waterfalls today, which is Little Navajo and 50-foot Falls. They're not nearly as long of a hike. I think it's like 6 or 7 miles. There is definitely some water crossings though, and I've heard the trails are kind of hard to find, so we're hoping we can find them, but we're excited to see them.
For our final full day in Havasupai, our goal was to knock off the last 2 waterfalls, starting with Little Navajo. This is actually one of the closest waterfalls to the lodge, but we found that the trail was not very well marked, so I would highly recommend to download the map ahead of time on all trails. Don't let that stop you though, because Little Navajo Falls are breathtaking and absolutely worth the trip. Although they are the smallest of the main waterfalls, we found that they were also way less crowded, and we felt like we were in our own private oasis. This is a perfect spot to relax and hang out and get some pretty awesome photos and videos to share with friends and family. After leaving Navajo Falls, we next made our way over to 50-foot Falls. It's not too far of a hike from here, but it does require traversing through some pretty deep sections of water. Also, just know that once you get to the falls, you're pretty much in the water the entire time and there's no beach area to put your stuff down, so you may want to leave behind anything you don't want to get wet. That said, these waterfalls are unbelievably beautiful and feel like a location straight out of the movie Avatar. Here you'll find panoramic views of crystal clear waterfalls all around you, and you can even go underneath and behind the falls. We also found that the spot was way less crowded than Havasu and Beaver Falls, which is pretty wild because personally this was one of my favorites. If you do go on a trip to Havasupai, make sure you don't pass this one up.
We just finished up exploring 50-foot falls. It was incredible. I think these two might be my favorite. I will say this, you probably want to leave your stuff outside because once you get in, you're pretty much up to chest high water. And also be careful when you are walking through the water because there's like some tree branches and rocks down there that you sometimes can't see. We did stumble over a few. I definitely wouldn't probably recommend to bring like expensive camera gear in. We left our big Sony camera outside. We might have been okay bringing it in, but it's just risky because if you stumble and fall, you can drop it or get it wet and probably not worth it. If anything, just bring your phone or like a GoPro would be perfect, which is what we brought. But super beautiful, highly recommend. I think we're gonna go head over to Havasu next, which is the waterfall we went to on the first day. But it's a really good one just to chill at and sunbathe and just play in the water. So I think we're gonna spend the rest of the day there before we head back to the lodge. But it's been an amazing day so far.
We were planning on spending the rest of the day relaxing at Havasu Falls, but while we were here, some other hikers mentioned that there's actually a 6th little-known waterfall that is appropriately named Hidden Falls. Not one to pass up a challenge, we decided to follow their directions and venture off in search of the final Hidden Falls. I'm not gonna lie, this waterfall is well named because it's not easy to find at all, and we had to backtrack a few times after losing the trail on the water crossings.
On our way to Hidden Falls, we're not sure where we're going. We think it's this way, but we're not positive. So we'll find out.
Eventually though, we saw the sign and made it to the rarely visited Hidden Falls. Honestly, this is the least impressive of all the waterfalls in Havasupai, so I wouldn't consider it a must visit, but it was nice to know that we didn't leave any waterfalls unseen.
Back to the lodge. I'm definitely gonna miss these views. It's our last night here. It has been a trip of a lifetime though, that's for sure.
After another long day, we made our way back to the lodge for the night where we ordered some pizza, which they actually deliver right to your room. It was a great way to finish off an epic trip to one of the most beautiful places on the planet. The next morning we woke up bright and early to make our trip out. Now you can always hike the 8 miles back uphill, but we took the easy route and grabbed a flight on the helicopter, which was so worth it and gave a really unique view of the canyon on the way out. If you do plan to take the helicopter, just make sure it is running since it only runs certain days, and make sure to get in line early because there is no reservations. We got a spot in line around 3 a.m. and didn't actually fly out until around 10 a.m., so definitely keep that in mind. It does cost $100 per person, but I think it was totally worth it, saving us from this strenuous 8-mile hike out in the heat. Well, that about wraps up our trip to Havasupai, Arizona. It really was the trip of a lifetime, and I would highly recommend visiting if you get the chance. For those planning a trip here, hopefully you found this helpful or at least entertaining, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, stay tuned for the end where I will go over a few tips and advice for those planning a trip here. Thank you all for watching though, and I'll catch you on the next adventure. Alright guys, thank you again for watching. I definitely appreciate y'all. I wanted to get on here real quick though and just give a little bit of tips and advice. These are things we wish we knew going into this. So if you are planning a trip to Havasupai or even just considering it, you'll definitely want to stick around for this part. Now I'm not going to go super in depth on this either because I think there's a lot of other really good videos out there that do go more in depth and kind of give a full guide of everything you need to know about a trip to Havasupai. But I do want to share a few things that I think are important that we've had a few people ask about already. Now that actually kind of leads into my first tip, which is if you are planning a trip here, do your research. I can't tell you how many YouTube videos we watched and how many trip guides we read through, which I would highly recommend because this is not an easy trip. This isn't just something you show up for. It's not a relaxing trip. There's a ton of work, a ton of planning that's involved. So do lots of research, watch lots of video, read lots of blogs about it, and just be prepared as much as you can going into it. With that said, let's jump into the important information. I do want to briefly talk about the permit process. They typically do like a pre-sale permit at the end of the year around December, and then permits officially open up usually the beginning of February. To apply, you do have to to create an account on the Havasupai website, which I will link below. Now, when you are applying, you have the option to either apply for the campground or the lodge. So you do need to think about ahead of time which one you want to do. Now, one of the biggest questions we have been asked is, would you recommend doing the lodge or the campground? Now, I can only go off our personal experience. We did the lodge, so we didn't actually stay in the campground. However, we did see the campgrounds, and I've read a lot about them and seen reviews of them as well. And honestly, there's pros and cons of each. We really enjoyed the lodge, just having the comforts of the air conditioning and a hot shower and running water. I can't tell you how nice those things were, especially after doing 15 miles of hiking in 100-degree weather. To be able to come home and relax in the air conditioning and take a hot shower was so worth it in our opinion. So for that reason, the lodge is amazing. Now, the big advantage of the campground, as I talked about in the video though, is that your location is in a much better spot to get to the waterfalls. Typically, you're looking at about an extra 2 miles of hiking from the lodge to the nearest waterfall that you wouldn't have to do if you stayed at the campground. And keep in mind that's 2 miles each way. So 2 miles there, 2 miles back, for a total of 4 miles extra each day that you're hiking if you stay at the lodge. And that really adds up. You'll want to weigh out, is it worth having these amenities to save an extra 4 miles of hiking every day? And that's kind of something you'll need to decide yourself. Also, if you plan to take the helicopter, where the helicopter takes off and lands from is right near where the lodge is. So if you're staying in the lodge and you want to catch a helicopter on the way out, you can just wake up and you're right there, you can check in. Whereas if you're at the campground, you got to hike 2 miles to get in line for the helicopters. Now, the other thing you want to consider is price as well. I'm going to put the prices up here for both the lodge and the campground as of 2025. Keep in mind, these can vary year to year. With the campground, this is the price per person, whereas the lodge is the price per room. Because with the lodge, you are allowed to have up to 4 people in the room, which is what we did. And if you really think about it, if you were to split the lodge between 4 people, the price really isn't that much more than doing the campground. And you do get all these extra amenities. So price-wise, it's really not as much more as you would think it would be to stay in the lodge compared to the campground. Now, when you are signing up for a permit as well, if you're traveling as a group, typically you'll need to select one person as the trip leader, and they apply for everyone. If you do get approved for the trip though, the trip leader then has to go pay for all the people in the group. So if you are a trip leader, make sure you can rely on the people that you're going with to pay you back. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck paying for all that money up front. Now, as far as things to pack for this trip, I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's so much that goes into this, and there's a lot of videos that break this down better than I can. Definitely make sure you bring in lots of water and lots of food. Although there is a little store where you can buy food and water there, you shouldn't rely on that because I've heard their stock can vary, and sometimes they're well stocked and sometimes they're not. So you don't want to get there and then have them be out of stock on certain things in your SOL. It's always just good to rely on yourself and make sure you're bringing everything you need. So you want to make sure you're bringing all the food you need for the 4 days, all the water, and you are going to be drinking lots of water because you are hiking a lot, and especially if you're going in the summer like we did, it's going to be extremely hot out. You'll probably want to bring sunscreen as well. And then if you are camping, something else to keep in mind is you have to bring some additional items such as your tent, sleeping bags, hammocks. So that's also something to factor in, is you do have to bring a few extra things, and which means you have to carry out that in if you are staying in the campground. Also, make sure you absolutely pack everything out. That includes your trash, that includes your toilet paper, all of that stuff. So bring extra Ziploc bags to pack that in, and do not leave anything behind. This is such a beautiful place, and we really need to take care of it. Don't trash it. Don't ruin it for everyone else. Please, please, please make sure you clean up after yourself and pack everything out. And if anything, if you see other people leaving trash behind, clean up after them as well and pack that out. Just try to leave it a little better than you found it. Now, as far as planning your itinerary and choosing what you're going to do each day, this is really up to you and kind of what you want to see and do while you're there. If you are looking to try to see all 5 of the major waterfalls though, I honestly think the way we did it was perfect because we designed it where a lot of the waterfalls we saw were on the path to the other one. So it just kind of made it easier. I like doing Havasu the first day. Just one, it's like the most iconic. It's also, I think, the easiest to get to. And that first day, you're already exhausted from the hike in anyway, so you don't want to do too much. The second day, I think, is a good day to get the longest hike out of your way, which it would typically be Beaver Falls. Mooney Falls is on the way to Beaver Falls anyway, so if you're going to do Beaver Falls, you're going to automatically do Mooney Falls. And I think it's good to get that one out of the way so towards the end of the trip you can kind of relax a little bit more and you're not trying to do all your extraneous stuff at the very end of the trip where you're already tired. And then one thing that we did not do, which we're hoping to do next time we go, is you can also hike to the confluence. So if you go to Beaver Falls, if you continue going past there, there's another hike. I believe it's an additional 7 miles. That will take you to the confluence, which is actually where the Colorado River and Havasu Creek meet each other. It looks really pretty. I've seen some videos, people that have hiked there. You have the blue waters of Havasu and then like the muddy waters of Colorado meet together. We chose not to this time though, just because by the time we got to Beaver, we were already exhausted. It was already the middle of the afternoon where it was extremely hot out, and we did not want to do an additional 7 miles there and another 7 miles back. If you are going to do that, you need to start very, very early, and it is a really, really long day. For the last full day though, I think it's a really good option to knock out Navajo and 50-foot falls, just because these ones aren't quite as far a distance, and by the end of the trip, you're pretty exhausted already, so I think it's a good idea to take that last day a little bit easier and just reward yourself for all the work that you've put in. Those are the main things that I wanted to discuss and talk about for those planning a trip. Again, there's so much more that goes into this, so definitely do your research. And if you do have specific questions that I didn't answer, definitely comment those down below and I'll try to get to your comment. Or if I get enough questions, I'll even make another video going a little more in depth about our trip to Havasupai. Overall though, it was one of the best trips we've ever taken. It was extremely challenging, but it was so rewarding and one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. But definitely take it seriously as well and do your research and plan and prepare as much as possible. Hopefully you did enjoy this video though. If so, definitely please like and subscribe. That really does help this channel out. I have lots more travels and adventures planned, so definitely stay tuned and hopefully we'll see you guys next video. Catch you later.